All right, so we continue with the superficial content. Man, I swear, my lecturers and mentors would not be happy with this kind of using the psychology as a weapon, but they know my intention is to use it more as a defense. All right. Yeah, hopefully it's not coming in too loud. I don't know, for some reason the last upload was coming out like too loud, like overly loud, where I think the sound, my voice was a bit muffled. So I don't know. I'm not an editor by any means at all. So yeah, just doing like a old school analog method on QuickTime just for now until I get a bit of software. I'm downloading Ecamm, I think it's called. So that's installing, and then I'll learn just some basic editing to make it all look very YouTube happy. So this is my YouTube algorithm at the moment. You can't really take anything seriously at all. It's mixed with content that I actually watch, mixed with a bit of garbage on the psychology. It's weird. I mean, it's channels, honestly, that I've never clicked on. It's just coming up. You'll see, okay, yeah, so we did the Dark Needle a little bit. We're going to do a lot more Dark Needle, just, you know, slowly as the channel progresses. We've got Charlie Morgan. I love Charlie. This isn't dating content. This is just entrepreneurship. Talks about masculinity. I've been watching Charlie for a little while now, over, well, almost 2 years. Probably my top 3 favorite content creators, literally, in the world. I love Charlie, man. Look up to him a lot. Awesome, mature guy. Proper masculine, mature. I don't know. I'm not going to go into a review, but just in case you're wondering, look at the channels. His thumbnails kill me, man. His thumbnails kill me. So today we'll get started a bit more deeply on Taraban. Taraban? I think he's Canadian. I don't know. I think he is. I haven't done a background on him. We've got the most important feature. Oh, no. Caramel. But it's honeycomb. It's not the salted caramel. If you know, you know, huh? If you know, then congratulations. All right. Let's just start with a reel, and then we'll go to the channel and watch a bit more long videos. All right.
It's
good strategy for men. Good strategy for men in modern dating.
Generally a good idea for men in particular to be more attractive to fewer women than to be less attractive to more women. I tell guys, if you can be really, really attractive to 1% of women, that's going to be more women than you're going to know how to deal with in your entire life. That's millions and millions and millions of women. You don't need more. But that means that 99% of women might be like, ooh, gross, ick, no. But if that 1% says, yum, that's my thing, that guy is going to be swimming in optionality. Like, you want to be the first person that women think of, as opposed to like that fewer women think of, than the second or third or fourth or fifth guy that more women think of. And that's a better.
He's saying like what? Don't be attractive to the average. I mean, I don't know. That kind of feels like it should just be the other way around, shouldn't it? I mean, the women should be striving for the 1% of men, I think. I mean, I don't know. That's a bit of a weird one. How do I go to his? I don't want to scroll down. How do I go to the channel? Psych hacks. Maybe I should subscribe just so I can fill the algorithm a bit. Videos. Men have a culture. I like the theme. It's got this kind of vintage style theme going here. Give him the money. Women don't share. I'm trying to find like a controversial one. She who cries wolf. Tall men have it easy. Why you were lied to and why it hurts so much. Order and chaos. Maybe we'll go with this one, why you were lied to. Women walking away. Are men to blame? Let's start with this one. Women walking away. I don't know how well you can hear it on the Bluetooth mic coming in.
This color grade was made with Imogen AI, using my light instead of...
Sorry about the ads.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is women walking away. So there's been some chatter on the interwebs recently indicating that women are increasingly walking away from relationships with men. And these posts and articles generally point to the fact that women regularly report lower relationship satisfaction than men do as the reason behind that exodus. Of course, there are all kinds of explanations for this perceived trend in the data. Some believe that long-term relationships fundamentally prioritize men's desires over women's. Some point to inequitable housework splits, or poor communication, or uncompensated emotional labor, or grief related to unmet emotional...
Apologies for the background sound effects.
needs. Reading these explanations, you might wonder if women get anything out of relating to men. They give so much, they get so little, and all of their sacrifices are for the benefit of the unfair sex. And on the surface, this sounds pretty convincing. Like, we don't want one gender, whether it is men or women, to be significantly and consistently less satisfied with relationships than the other. Like, that's going to create some problems, not least of which being that fewer and fewer relationships will be transacted, which is actually what we're already seeing. So this is a serious complaint. But I decided to look into this a little bit more first. As a clinician, it is sometimes essential to get information.
Who's a clinician? What, like a YouTube clinician? I had no idea, man.
From multiple sources. For instance, in identifying ADHD in children, a psychologist needs evidence to confirm the diagnosis from two independent sources, like his parents at home and his teachers at school.
This is not behavioral psychology. That is purely cognitive.
If the child is only acting up at home, it could be the problem actually lies with the home environment or the parenting style and not with the child, him or herself.
True, the parenting style, not just the parenting style, obviously the environment, but I don't know, that seems a bit misleading or just superficial.
On the other hand, if the same issue appears across multiple contexts, we can be more confident in diagnosing an individual problem. And this, of course, is very important to do with children, as they cannot consent to their own treatment and may end up being medicated against their will as a result of being inconvenient to a particular adult.
So let's apply this logic to the problem of women's dissatisfaction in relationships. It would certainly be damning if we found evidence that women reported significantly more satisfaction in other domains of their lives. So, what about work? If women are unsatisfied in their relationships, then maybe they find satisfaction in their careers. And you know what? While the literature isn't unanimous, it turns out that women report lower job satisfaction than men do. Well, that's interesting. And of course, there are all kinds of interpretations for that finding: the gender pay gap, sexist management policies, patriarchal organizational structures, etc., etc. Well, that sounds concerning. Are men keeping women down at work just like they're keeping women down at home? Geez, men, get a hobby. But then I looked into that. According to an article in Labor Economics, forthrightly titled, "Do Women Prefer Female Bosses?" women report significantly lower job satisfaction when working under another woman compared to working under a man. Men's reported job satisfaction.
Working under a woman and working under a man? I'm sorry, I know, it's just a bit superficial.
Satisfaction, on the other hand, was unrelated to the gender of his supervisor. So there's that. And I've already debunked the gender pay gap in another episode, so check that out if you need a refresher. Okay, well, yeah, that's just two places, right? Maybe outside of their jobs and outside of their relationships, women are more content. But it turns out that women have significantly higher rates of anxiety and depression relative to men. They're also over twice as likely to be on a psychiatric medication than men are. But of course, there are explanations for that as well. It's not that women actually have higher rates of mental illness than men do. Women are just better at asking for help than men are. They are more open with their feelings than men are. They value self-development more than men do, etc., etc. And of course, if that were correct, it would indicate that men are a wildly underserved population. And this would merit a substantial and immediate social...
Men are an underserved part of the population, no doubt. At the same time, men are the overwhelming majority of the issue in the population, or a lack of men. Men are the cause, males are the cause of the issues in society that are being dealt with by men and women. Men are causing the problems that men and women have to deal with. He's not going macro enough. He's not going big picture enough. He's saying in society, the women are experiencing more difficulties in most of the domains in their lives. Men and women are both victims of culture. So he's focusing on women being the victims. But this is the consistent thing they always like to do, these influencers. They bypass what's causing the problem and they go to the victims, which the majority are women. I'll try and finish it actually. I'll try and finish a bit more before I start analysing.
Action to help men, given they apparently receive a fraction of the treatment for presumably comparable rates of illness. But suffice it to say, that social movement does not appear to be forthcoming. Introducing my innovative first novel, Starry Night. Step into the world of painter Vincent van Gogh. Genius, sinner, prophet, madman. Relive the final 10 weeks of his life in this breathtaking tale of art, love, loss, and meaning, and challenge what you think you know about life and relationships. Once you see through Vincent's eyes, the world will never look the same again. Starry Night. Order your copy today. The links are in the description.
I know everyone was thinking that he looks like an incarnation of Vincent van Gogh. Don't tell me the ads. Sorry about the ads.
In any case, this is just the pits. Women are less satisfied in their relationships, they're less satisfied at work,
True.
and they're more discontented on their own.
True.
Perhaps they'd be more satisfied if they didn't have to deal with men whatsoever, since men are so often presumed to be the cause of their discontent.
True. See? This is what I mean. He's saying it sarcastically. Finally, that came out a bit more clear. Do you get what I'm trying to point out the issue in the way he's explaining things? His sarcasm is, can you recognize the pattern that they're dissatisfied in all the domains, blaming the men everywhere? He's saying it in a sarcastic way. Men didn't just build Western society, man. Men invented capitalism. Men invented the whole economic possibility that we're living in. Men invented tribalism. Men invented culture. You know, tribalism is the absolute fundamental platform that humans' civilization unconsciously lives out, if that makes sense. Males, the male gender of the species. I'm just trying to go big picture here. You understand what I'm trying to do? It's not nitpicking these individual channels. I'm using the influencers' content to try and point out, how much they're focusing on small picture, blaming the gender. You want to blame a gender? Okay, you want to be that superficial? Then at least hold the correct gender accountable. You know what I'm saying?
In which case, sexual relationships that don't involve men would presumably be the happiest and most harmonious of all, right?
Sarcasm.
Actually, it turns out that the divorce rate among lesbians is even higher than the divorce rate among straights.
This is how I know he's a fake psychologist, man. That is deceiving. Look, you have to think deeply here, all right? And you have to really put morality aside when it comes to psychoanalysis. You really have to put your individual subjective or objective morality aside, right? To at least analyze and diagnose the problem. See, I knew he was leading towards this, right? By him being sarcastic that if women should forget about having men around in their lives, shouldn't they be happier? Then why are most lesbian relationships ending up in divorce? Implying, right, that the lesbian couples, the lesbian women are accountable for their own psychological injuries. Not all of them. I'm not saying lesbians are psychologically injured. I'm saying there are lesbian couples and gay couples and straight couples with traumatic symptoms that are transpersonal to them, that are transpersonal to their cognitive egos, right? That are affecting their behaviors in relationships, not just with their partners or their wives and husbands, with everyone in their lives and their family members and their friends. There are transpersonal, psychological causations to a human being that has, it's not about negative, positive, it's not about right or wrong, it's not about good or evil, it's not about morality here, guys. Agree or disagree about the gays and lesbians or whatever, just put morality to the side. The science is suggesting that if a gender is seeking an intimate relationship with the same gender, there is a deep psychological cause. Okay? There's a psychological mechanism working in process, right? The trauma that has been inflicted, right? Even if there's no trauma, don't think that, if a gay man or a gay woman, a lesbian is, she grew up and decided, or not decided, if she, unconsciously became, from her thinking, whether it's at birth or not, or whatever, you know what I mean? She became a lesbian, or she was always a lesbian, even from a young age, whatever. I'm not implying that she went through some kind of physical abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, traumatic. That's not what the science is saying. That's not what the psychology is saying. The psychology is saying that the reason this ego is fusing intimacy with, love with sexual intimacy in a specific gender, there is a deep psychological cause that is transpersonal to that person's ego. Do you understand? I don't know, we have to go beyond, just dive beyond the superficial. This guy's at level 1, level 2, level 1.5. You got to dive to level 4, you know what I mean? To level 5, at least. You have to see things objectively. You have to consciously remove your ego from the center of the transpersonal, right? Not like he's doing. Not like he's doing. This clinician, this psychologist, has just pointed out that the women that are supposed to be taking accountability for their behavior, right? Lesbians that are resulting in, getting divorced, which, in not all cases is the wrong or bad or negative thing to do. So that already takes out a big percentage of his, bullshit, assumption, right? That already is a big flaw in his argument, right? Because he's implying that divorce is the unhealthy thing to do, right? In some cases, in a lot of cases, I wouldn't say in most cases, but in a lot of cases, it is the mature thing to do. And it is the healthy thing to do. And it is the productive thing to do, right? There's a big flaw in the argument. Look at this. Look. Mil subs. There's so much engagement. Why can't I see the views here? No, I think when you click on the video first, then you see the views come up in the thumbnail. Oh no, here we go. 143,000 views in 6 months. how many of these people, you know what I mean? Like how many of unrealistic, like how many of these people are realizing what I'm telling you right now? How many can point out? How many are able to recognize his argument through his rose-colored lenses? You know, how many people can identify his ego in his argument?
Less satisfied at work, and they're more discontented on their own. Perhaps they'd be more satisfied if they didn't have to deal with men whatsoever, since men are so often presumed to be the cause of their discontent.
It's such dumb sarcasm. It's immature.
In which case, sexual relationships that don't involve men would presumably be the happiest and most harmonious of all, right?
According to the psychology, to the decades and decades of scientific study based on scientific methods of understanding the human psyche, okay? There is something that has it's not about negative or positive, all right? It's not about good or evil, remember. But if a human relationship doesn't involve male and female sexual intimacy, the psychology is not pointing out anything objective or anything moral. The psychology is pointing out that there is a cause. There is a cause to that, right? It's not, you know, it's not a common thing to happen in the natural process of life. That's all the psychology is saying. That it's not a common outcome, and there's a cause for that outcome. Forget about good or evil, forget about morality here, okay? There's a cause to that outcome, and that cause is almost 100% of the time something that has occurred in the lives of one of the individuals or both the individuals in the relationship through childhood. Okay? There is a cause, and the psychology can identify the cause and identify its transpersonal nature to the ego of that child that ended up in a same-sex relationship, that ended up in divorce. He's using psychology to give a one-sided argument. The whole point, the whole objective of the psychology is to level everything back out objectively, removing ego, removing morality, removing the human input of the science and just studying nature, right? This isn't self-psychology. This isn't behavioral psychology. This is barely cognitive ego psychology. This is YouTube psychology. This is YouTube psychology, which unfortunately I'm sucked into now, I guess, aren't I?
Actually, it turns out that the divorce rate among lesbians is even higher than the divorce rate among straights. And it's already pretty high among straights. How men might be to blame for that one, I'm not sure, but I imagine an explanation.
So the people that are in the, ending their relationships in divorce, let's look at the ones, with psychological personality disorders, whether they are too promiscuous, they are too lustful, they are unattentive, whatever personality, whatever flaw, whatever issue they have in their behaviors, right? Don't worry about their personalities. Who raised those people? Who raised, like, do you see how superficial? You know what he's doing? Like, a lot of people do. It's kind of forgivable because, you know, he is holding the adults accountable for their behavior. But if their behavior is unconscious due to their abuse, due to their abusive upbringing, whether it's their parents or foster parents or whatever guardian that was carrying their projection of their entire center of being as a 6-year-old child, like, it's an extremely complex, man, infinitely complex problem that he's just summing up in a superficial blabber, in a 10-minute, 11-minute almost blabber. This represents where we are at, where all of the victims are coming to hear decades and decades and decades of issues that have caused it, you know, trauma that has caused issues in their personalities and their behaviors, and they need to cure it in less than 15 minutes.
Exists somewhere. Perhaps it's internalized homophobia as a result of participating in a toxic, misogynistic culture. However, given the fact that the divorce rate among gays is significantly lower than the rate among the other two groups, this might be a tough sell.
What does it suggest? Do you see what he's accidentally done? He's accidentally implied that a higher divorce rate is a negative thing, and a lower divorce rate is a positive thing. What if the gay men are not divorcing due to unconscious narcissistic projections on their intimate partner, therefore allowing them to force themselves into an abusive relationship that were never given the opportunity to mature enough to be able to divorce the relationship? In the gay marriages, how many, in those stats, how many divorces would be, how many of those relationships require divorce as the mature thing to do? Come on, bro. God, I hope this video gets out, man.
Do you get the point? Let's return to the original topic. We can now
Do we get the point?
see how many of the reports of women's lower relationship satisfaction relative to men are functionally misleading. It's not that they're not true. It's that they all kind of assume that this increased discontentment is a deviation from the norm, that it's unique to this context, to their relationships with men. However, we've seen evidence that this might not be the case. We see lower satisfaction in women in numerous different contexts relative to men. And this, of course, suggests another possible explanation of the data, an explanation that, to my mind, has the advantage of parsimony, as this one explanation could account for all the observed phenomena we've just discussed. It could be wild speculation, but here it is. It just might be the case that women are more discontent than men are. I don't know, possibly, maybe.
The sarcasm is cringe, man.
And If that crazy idea could possibly be true,
Crazy idea, possibly be true.
it might not be men's fault. But perhaps it could be based on enduring differences that exist.
You know, how do you have a whole channel with 1 million subs that are probably sophisticated? I mean, your subs aren't, you know, Jungian psychologists. There's not 1 million. It's probably not one Jungian psychologist subscriber, but they are 1 million people that are at least more, you know, a lot more intellectual than the average YouTube subscriber, right? And there's 1 million of them. You know, how do you gather that much support promoting masculinity when you don't even hold the men accountable for the problem that women have with their unconscious behaviors? I didn't want to play the blame game. You want to play the blame game. You pluralistically to the influencers. They want to play the blame game. I thought we're not playing the blame game. I thought the mature thing is to diagnose the problem, which shouldn't be men or women. But if you do want to blame, if you do want to be that immature as a psychologist, man, you're a clinician. He's an unconscious misogynist. I'm going to give a 1 minute, just a 1 minute psychoanalysis on this, just on him, just on this video. Because to me, it's obvious, I know. All right, it's going to sound ridiculous, all right, giving this psychoanalysis. Already, I can see okay, Mr. Psychologist, you want to talk, you know, masculine and feminine to be genders, right? There is, I mean, to any psychologist watching, anyone that's at least slightly fundamentally aware of an actual recognized academic, psychological, psychoanalytic practice, and you're already referring to the masculine and feminine as genders, right? Okay. That's your first fundamental fuck up. There's your first flop, okay? Now, the way he's addressing the feminine clearly, to me, is in a very unhealed, unconscious manner. He has clearly projected in a countertransference his unsettling opinion about women being the cause of the problem indicates to me his unhealed anima within himself, right? Sorry, his animus. He's contrasexual. He thinks that he's fully developed in his masculine consciousness while completely blaming a biological gender of the species. This is why you really have to, I mean, the only way you can understand this analysis, you have to have at least some kind of psychological viewpoint. that the masculine and feminine aren't genders. They are the two divine, eternal aspects of your psyche, of the human mind, of the human essence, man. It's scientific because we can study it. We have conscious egos and we have behaviors that we are not conscious to. There is a masculine and feminine nature in the human psyche. This supposed self-identified masculine is blaming the gender, right? This is where I need the whiteboard. Maybe I should get a whiteboard. He's blaming the gender that is carrying the feminine projection of his. He's carrying the projection, of the feminine aspect of his own psyche. So he's already unconsciously aware that there is a feminine, that his mind is made up of as a feminine. But because it's split off and it hasn't been integrated due to whatever reason in his upbringing, he's completely transferred it onto the contrasexual in the biological sense. Physically, the physical carriers of the feminine consciousness is the female gender. By him acknowledging them as, okay, maybe not the problem, maybe he's not being, moral or immoral about it, but the cause, at least, of their own dissatisfied selves, he has engaged in a countertransference. He can only continue with this identity if his projection onto the carriers of the feminine aspect of his psyche validate that projection. I'm going this deep because I don't want to sit here for 2.5 hours going through psychoanalysis, okay? This is, it's even superficial of me right now. This isn't a Jungian practice. It's not, clinical practice at all. I'm freestyling here, man. I'm freestyling. I'm using direct knowledge straight to the front line, defending true masculinity. This, by no means to me, in my observation, it cannot be possible to be a mature masculine if the feminine aspect of the unconscious has been split off and projected onto a biological species. I hope, you know what? I don't wish anything and I don't hope, okay? There's no hopes. If you have at least, you don't even have to read the books or do the 150 plus hours of specialized psychoanalytic behavioral therapy, right, that I've gone through. You don't have to read the books. It's just go through the channel if you've at least paid attention, right? Or read at least a little bit, Jungian psychology. Since you're interested in the channel, in this knowledge, you'll understand. You will understand, right? That's all I can say.
between men and women, perhaps men's fault? But perhaps it could be based on enduring differences that exist between men and women. Like, oh God, geez, I don't know, men's significantly higher concentrations of testosterone, which has been well documented to increase contentment and emotional regulation. But, no.
It's also documented to be the majority of causes to sexual misconduct, indecent assault. I wouldn't say rape. I wouldn't say directly sexual assault. But how obvious that he negates the problems that also come with the flooding of testosterone in the male gender. How biased, not even biased, like how much ego is identified right now. Can you identify the ego, please? Don't think of ego as in the arrogance and, oh, you know, look at his big ego. I'm talking about his individual personality, his emotional standpoint. Look at this psycho, man. This guy needs a therapist. Like, listen to what he said.
But perhaps it could be...
He's trying to be objective and he's trying to go to nature. He's trying to appeal to the nature of the male gender with the testosterone, all right? So it's not the culture, right? It's not their personalities, it's their nature.
Based on enduring differences that exist between men and women? Like, oh God, geez, I don't know, men's significantly higher concentrations of testosterone, which has been well documented to increase contentment and emotional regulation?
It's so fundamentally flawed. Is it women's fault they're not flooded with testosterone? So if you're saying this is one of the things that helps men solve the issues of dissatisfaction that the women haven't, one of the reasons is the testosterone. So if you want to keep it biological, how are women to blame?
Enduring differences that exist between men and women, like, oh God, has been well documented to increase contentment and emotional regulation. But
also increases sexual abuse, child sexual abuse. It also increases sexual harassment. Gotcha, bitch. Come on, man. You don't have to be that intellectual to point out the problems also caused by this guy's solutions. For fuck's sake, man.
Nutty. But at least we can't rule it out completely.
Stupid ass.
So where does that leave us? Maybe women do need to walk away from their relationships in order to determine whether it actually makes their lives better. If it does, wonderful. I'm not going to argue that they come back. I'm concerned about reducing unnecessary suffering wherever it happens to appear. But my hunch is...
That's misleading. You have to see this, man. Come on. You have to see it. That is subtle. That is manipulative. That is the black magician. That is the shadow priest. The shadow shaman at work. This guy is an embodiment, man. He is an embodiment. Not the shadow priest. He's a bit higher up. He's more of an intellect, all right? He's more serious, right? He's a high priest.
That this is not what will happen. And that a lot of the dissatisfaction that women experience is rooted in inappropriate expectations.
Okay, all right. So this bozo with 1 million subs has just explained that the cause of men's increase in contentment and satisfaction and emotional regulation is a biological cause, right? So he's unconsciously referred to the objective, and then he's referred to the problem with the other gender, right? The female gender is what? Sorry, what's the cause?
Experience is rooted in inappropriate expectations.
Inappropriate expectations. So it's cognitive. All right. Do you see? Come on, man. Come on, man. I can't be the fucking only one. Do you see? You don't have to be a Jungian psychoanalyst. You don't have to be a psychologist, man, to see that. He's on 1 million subs.
Women have been sold a bill of goods about work and relationships.
By who? By women?
And when they find that dating and jobs don't live up to these expectations, they tend to believe that there is something wrong with that particular relationship, or with that particular company, or with that particular culture, or that particular worldview in which that particular relationship or company are operated, rather than with their
Men do this all the time. Men are more perpetual victims, I would argue. Men are more perpetual victims. Bro, you just ranted for almost 11 minutes. Couldn't you just say there's a reason why you believe that women are perpetual victims?
realistic expectations. However, comparing reality to the ideal of what could be is always disappointing, regardless of whether the person doing the comparing is a man or a woman. And perhaps the difference then comes from the fact that men aren't inundated with propaganda about what they deserve from the time they're children. Food for thought. What do you think? Does the time they're or older? Comparing reality to the ideal of what could be is always disappointing, regardless of whether the person doing the comparing is a man or a woman. And perhaps the difference then comes from the fact that men aren't inundated with propaganda about what they deserve from the time they're children.
How aren't men inundated as well? They're on social media. Okay, maybe slightly more women use social media. Maybe the majority of women use social media. But how aren't men completely flooded these days? Okay, maybe not in the 40s or the 50s, but these days, you know, how aren't young men especially flooded with bullshit influencers showing them the lifestyle that they need to have or should have? This is pathetic, man. This is manipulative. This is misleading. This is very manipulative. This is misogynistic. This is unconsciously narcissistic. He's talking about ideals, how women ideal and fall in love with the idea. He's completely idealized the opposite sex in a countertransference.
Food for thought. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. Please send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message. I know you know someone who needs.
Yeah, promote. The shadow priests propaganda. We'll leave it there. We'll do more of Taraban. I'll see you next one.